Tēnā tātou, we'll make a start. I think we have quorum now, so that's good. If we lose somebody, we'll be struggling for quorum, so just make sure you touch base with Amy if you're ducking off somewhere. Have we got Jeff on the call? Yep, cool. All right, Tame, please. I'm echoing, aren't I? Just a little. Tame, please open the meeting. Thank you.
Tawa koe nei mātou e tono atu kia koe kia pā mai tō ringa aroha ki rungi a mātou katoa e huitahi nei mo tēnei kaupapa mo te tau nei rangatira o kirikiri roa. Arahi mātou I rungi te tika me te pono, whakatongia tō wairua tapu. Kia kore e kōtiti I roto I ngā mahi tō rangapu. Koe nei mātou e whakawheta I rungi te ingoa tō mātou kai whakaora. Mo ake ake. Tēnā koutou.
All right, we're going into the, as agreed, into the annual plan adoption as the first item. Are there any apologies for partial apologies or full apologies for the day?
We do have apologies from Councillor Bunting, Councillor Hamilton and I do Ralph for lateness. Bunting is for full absence today.
Okay.
But that meeting they're going to, political meeting they're going to, doesn't start yet.
Well, I've asked for partial apologies too, but if people leave the meeting, I guess we'll deal with that at the time. Okay, let's. The agenda is as confirmed.
We do need to move in second.
Excuse me, Mayor Paula.
Sure.
It's Rob here.
Hi.
I will have to leave around 11 o'clock.
All right.
If the meeting is still continuing this afternoon, when I get back from Wellington, then I will resume back into the council meeting then.
I jolly well hope it's not going that late, Rob, but thank you.
I do too, but if it is, I'll be around then.
All right, thanks so much. All right, move the apologies be accepted. Seconder, please. Seconder, Maxine, thank you. All in favour? Yeah. Are there any conflicts of interest? No conflict of interest. Confirmation of the agenda. I'll move that the agenda is as confirmed. It's very straightforward. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Van Oosten, all in favour?
Just a question
Sure.
to governance, actually, about which set of diligent notes we're to be using. Has today's diligent notes been updated with yesterday's items?
For ease, we'll start in the 30th of June Council agenda and then we'll refer back to the 29th agenda.
Thank you. And if you could guide us through that, that would be pretty helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if anybody online didn't catch that, we're in the diligent on the 30th of June. That's where we're starting, and then we'll revert back to the business we were doing yesterday. Amy will let us know when that occurs. All right, thank you so much. Amy's watching for questions. I'll keep an eye out and don't you sing out if I've overlooked you. All right, development contributions policy. Thank you. Good morning.
Morena Koto. So we're here today to seek approval for the proposed development contributions policy and for it to become operative from 1 July 2022. I'll take the report as read and open for any questions.
1 minute, just get my questions up so I can see them. Are there any questions, councillors?
It's not specifically, I guess, about what's written here, if I can. Are you anticipating any problems with developments that happen in the near future trying to claim that the old one should apply? Is there going to be a level of, like we've had in the past with Peacock and what's the place up by Wintec?
Yeah, Rotikari.
Yeah.
No, the answer to that is no. The spike, if you like, in activity that we've experienced in the past is one that typically coincides with an LTP cycle, where there is a reviewed CapEx in the LTP, which is then reflected in the brand new schedule of assets. So good question for this time next year.
Okay, I'll remember that,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so do we have a mover and a seconder? Sorry. Oh, to councillors. Councillor McPherson, Councillor Donovan, moved and seconded. Is there any debate? No. That's a good way to start the day. Excellent. All in favour?
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're now on to rates remission postponement policy. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. So I'd just like to introduce you to Andrew. So Andrew is our rates manager, and he's going to take you through the paper today.
Welcome.
Morning. Today I'm asking for Council to adopt an amendment to the rates, remissions and postponement policy. We've added a new remission for Māori freehold land under development. This remission is a new requirement of the Local Government Rating Act. Through the Chair, I'd like to take the report as read and happy to take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions? Councillor McPherson.
What's the definition of under development? Does that mean that someone's lodged an appeal, an application I should say, or is it prior to that, or does it mean bulldozers on the ground sort of level?
Yeah, so it can mean all of those things. So we anticipate that this would mostly be used. I mean, we only have 2 properties affected, but we expect that it would most often be used where the property was currently vacant and unused. Yeah. So potentially from the time of making any kind of application to council, we could then consider that property to be used. So from which time, the next 1 July, it would otherwise start being rated. So it's effectively from that time until the development is actually complete and is being used, we would be able to remit rates during that time.
Yeah, I was also thinking ahead to land coming into the city, because I know we don't have much now, but we could have more. And then there's disputed properties, which at the moment probably won't go anywhere, but who knows in future what might happen with ones like down in Peacock and that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this would carry forward to anything else that comes into the city?
Yeah, it would, but the policy is reviewed as part of the LTP. So if there was going to be a significant change and we felt we needed to change our policy, then we would obviously review it.
And you could even bring it quicker than that if you needed to?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Couple of questions. One is, I take it that this is a statutory requirement anyway, so it's not a question of council having a choice.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, that's easily answered. Does it include all Māori freehold land? You know, for example, if there is a, and I'm thinking here of some city sites where there have been buildings on those sites, and the building's been demolished, and the site is sitting ready for redevelopment. And you know, there's examples around the city such as corner of Broad Street and Victoria Street. Does that land also qualify for rates remission?
It wouldn't currently. So the designation of Maori freehold land is made by the Maori Land Court. So an application would have to be made and go through that process to have that designation first. Yeah.
Do you think that that's likely to happen? That if I use that piece of land, which I think is owned by TGH, and I also think of all the land out at Ruakura, which is subject to the private plan change, is there a risk for us that all of that land could fall into that category and the city might lose a significant amount of rates?
Potentially, but the real risk there would be the legislative requirement that unused Maori freehold land is non-rateable. So that's not something that we could do anything about anyway. It would only be the fact that we would be potentially extending that during a period of development.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, some of those developments could go for a number of years, couldn't they?
They could. There is also an aspect of discretion in the remission where they would have to demonstrate some of the benefits sort of described in the legislation.
What's happened, Rob?
Does that answer your question?
He's still talking, but...
Oh, you've gone mute. You've muted yourself.
Yeah, just, is that discretion available to us, or is it the Maori Land Court?
The discretion for the remission is open to us. The designation to Maori freehold land is not, council's not involved in that process at all.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any further questions? No? No? All right, well, we need a mover and a seconder. I'll move. Councillor Wilson is seconding. Thank you. All in favour? You know, I like to not move everything, just
Carried
because,
unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us on to the adoption of the annual plan. Yep. Yes. Are you going to talk to it?
So no, not really. Obviously, we are bringing the final version of the annual plan to council today to approve. So you would see in your attachments the actual document itself. I'm not sure. I think there was one still thing yesterday I saw we were just updating the forward right at the front, but otherwise the rest of it is finalised. There was a slight change for some of the numbers that was in the recommendation from the last council meeting and what is in the actual formal document. That was, as you know, when we're modelling, we're doing it at a reasonably high level. When we go back in behind the scenes and do it within the system itself, obviously we do that with a lot more detail. So that's just us finalising all of those last minute details in the financial system and then flowing that through all of the accounts. So with that, council, I will take this report as read.
Excellent. Well, to get it on the table, I'll move it. Do I have a seconder? Hey? Thank you, Sarah. I say, what? Nobody's going to second this. Come on, you can debate, but you've got to second it. Thanks, Sarah. Any questions? Councillor Pascoe.
Sorry, no, I'll wait for the debate, thanks.
Okay, any questions? Nope. No. Okay, we are in debate. I'm not going to say too much because, to be quite honest, we had a really good go at this at the last meeting and turned every stone over, discussed every nook and cranny of the annual plan, trying to find a balance between affordability and doing critical work for the city to set up for success. I mean, we've all agreed that we need to move fast to provide what Hamilton needs for the future, to build those affordable homes that we all need. And we also agreed that we needed to look after the assets that we've already got. And so, as Ewan has spoken to before, we've got a much stronger focus on renewals and maintenance, and he may wish to comment further. We did throw around some really big, weighty issues that the whole of New Zealand is struggling with and trying to get their head around, and that includes inflation. There was a range of views around the table about inflation. It wasn't a set view, but even then we navigated those kind of tricky waters to land on a place where we feel that we can go forward in confidence out to the public as much as you can in these unsettled financial times that we're all facing. So, you know, look, on a personal comment, I feel for the public. They're going through very hard financial times too, stacking up their businesses, and some of them have been severely impacted by the COVID shutdowns. So we do keep that in the back of our mind, but we can't run our city into the ground. And we all had different passions when it came to the projects. And that's pretty normal for a diverse council like us. I think it's a strength that we have advocates across the range who are passionate about various different projects, and we can all pick our preferred projects out of that list. So at the end of the day, I think it's a pretty good result. we might not like every sentence in it, every decision in it. That's politics, that's democracy, but we should go forward as united as possible and make this year's annual plan formal. Okay, Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I don't disagree with your comments, Mayor Paula, about maintaining our assets and the type of spending that we need to do in order to operate and run the city. But I don't think we can afford to do this with an inadequate rate increase. We've moved within a year from a deficit of 2 million to 14. That's a 7 times increase. And we haven't had the courage to look at a rate increase which reflects that level of spending. When I look around the country, it appears to me that the average rate increase, including those with no rate increase, is about 6.75%. And I look at specific growing cities like New Plymouth at 7%, Rotorua at 6%, Taupo at 7%, Wakatani at 7%, Tauranga at 13.7%, and interestingly enough, of course, Tauranga don't have the political persuasion that reduces any rate increases. And even our little brother down the road, the Waikato Regional Council, have put rates up by 7.7%, all reflecting the additional costs that we're being burdened with. And, none of the suppliers to each of us are saying, we're going to go away and borrow your money. Spark haven't come to me when they came with a $5 a month increase in my internet and said, look, Rob, we're not going to charge you for this. We're going to go and borrow the money and we'll absorb that. And essentially, that's what we're doing. All these rate increases, and we have a 4.9% increase that we decided on last year and haven't really updated that to reflect the changes. Even central government is smart enough. Tomorrow they will have a new excise increase in excise tax, and that goes up by the CPI. And they're even cleverer than that, because not only does it go up by the 7%, but it also has GST on it, so they have effectively a double dip. I'm still concerned that this decision that we've got today creates a debt of $14 million. That debt needs to be repaid from future surpluses. There won't be a surplus until 26, 27, even if there is one then. And every past long-term plan I look at that had surpluses planned for this year are well and truly out of date. So by the time this council gets to 26, 27, I think we'll be finding more spending to do and not increasing the rates. We can't grow the city if we continue to operate with low levels of surplus. So when we have deferrals popping up in future years, it's not going to be because we can't deliver. It'll be because we cannot afford. And then worst to this is that at least 11 of you will be handing, when you vote this in, you will be handing a legacy to the next or future councils of a poor rating decision today that has not been aligned with spending. And this is the similar financial mess that Mayor Hardacre inherited when she became the mayor in 2010. Now is the last chance to vote against this motion and quickly convene a meeting to
Last
review.
point. Sorry, you're out of time, but keep to your last points.
Oh, look, I'm finishing off. I'm sorry I'm out of time, but quickly convene a meeting to review either a rate increase that is in line with the spending, or reduce the spending to reduce the outgoing and unplanned deficit that we now have, that we didn't have in 12 months ago. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. Ewan's next, and then Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Paula, and colleagues. Look, I think I slightly disagree with my good friend Councillor Rob, but just slightly. I think our problem is not a reluctance to manage to put a rate increase. I think our addiction is one of spending. And I think there's a large cohort of my good colleagues who, for all sorts of reasons, often very community-orientated reasons, they believe we need to do much, much more, and they believe the appropriate mantra is, in this current economic times, let's just borrow. Let's just borrow. And I think that philosophy, and I know some good friends will disagree with me, I think that philosophy will end up causing subsequent councils, and I think this is where Councillor Rob and I agree, considerable pain and discomfort. I am reminded that we are here today after a year or so ago making a decision then to reduce our rates. And of course that compounded. So we've carried that burden through. And now, in addition to that, we haven't stopped our spending addiction. And so that just keeps adding to our debt. I believe we don't have inflation under control, and I don't believe we've got that quite right. I've tried a couple of times to adjust that further. I think we've seen some recent inflationary pressures that are going to make some of our earlier decisions look out of date already. I still remain really concerned about our habit of playing with deferrals, and I'm really devastated about the fact that we are not able to balance our books in the very near future. And I'm devastated that we won't be looking at a surplus until 26, 27. But here's the rub. We'll make this decision today, and there'll be an election in October, and the new council will come in, and they will inherit this. And it's likely that
Ewan, sorry, stop a moment. You've gone all sort of like you're talking in a bottle. Sound went wonky. Can you try again?
Yeah, sure. Is that better now?
Yes, that is. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll quickly finish up. What I'm really concerned about is the new incoming council will have to manage this problem, and I think the ratepayers will see a significant increase in rates going forward, because I see no likelihood that we will manage our spending addiction. So I will not be, respectfully, I will not be supporting this annual plan, because I think it's inherently flawed on multiple points. But I accept there will be people who will strongly disagree with me, and I'm already getting texts from Councillor Dave, no doubt trying to cause me discomfort. But the reality is I'm here to express my concerns. I think we spend too much. We try to do too much. In the 16 years in local government, the payroll has pretty well doubled in my time. We're now a payroll of 102 million a year, and we see no signs of spending discipline. So I won't be supporting it today.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Follow the new speaking limit of 3 minutes and 41 seconds.
Yeah, sorry, it's really hard to push people back when they're on Zoom.
Look, it was quite instructive, the last two speakers. The first one said that we were underspending, the second one said we were overspending. So I'm feeling relatively comfortable now, somewhere in the middle. And that is humorous in one sense, but it also is a sort of a statement about the different pressures that councils like us feel. Clearly, we need to do the sorts of things Rob says to prepare well for the future. Clearly, at the same time, we need to, as far as is possible, control spending so we can balance the books. As Ewan says, he wants that to happen sooner. Rob wants the catch-up to happen sooner. And we've tried to strike a middle course, I guess, which is not a consensus, but it's probably a compromise, is probably the right word. I don't have a problem extending the balancing the books out for a couple more years. I say that to Councillor Ewan because I believe that what we're putting in place now in terms of the facilities and services will be well there for those people in 3 or 4 years' time. They'll be using them just like we are, and they'll have the benefit of the decisions we've made now, which could also be a problem because I recognise your point about inflation, and no one's got a very exact answer to that, just a fear of what might happen. Look, I'm glad you mentioned, Ewan, the last-minute cutting of 1% off rates last year, which seemed good to a slight majority at the time, but has rebounded on it. Had we not done that, I say to Councillor Rob, we would have been about on the average rate increase around the country now. We wouldn't have needed that extra 1.5% to get us up to that level. So, look, we're trying to balance things here. If we followed Councillor Rob's point of trying to do it all at once, to do all of that catch-up at once, I suggest you wouldn't have many of the existing councillors getting re-elected. That's one of the problems that you have doing that in this time of the year, the election cycle. I also point to, and Councillor Ewan hasn't said this time, but he has in the past, the legacy of Mayor Hardacre was to leave a whole lot of unmet need in the city that we had to spend 3 or 4 years catching up with.
Point of order, Chair.
What is the point of order, sorry?
Misinterpretation of what I said. I mentioned the legacy that Mayor Hardacre inherited, not the actions that she took.
No, but
subsequent to becoming mayor.
It's very interesting, and I'm not attacking that. I'm talking about the legacy she left.
Okay, well, that's a matter of political conjecture.
Yeah.
I accept your point, though, Rob. You're right in terms of that.
What do you mean you accept his point? I wasn't even attacking his point.
No, I'm just saying we recognise that he's made a point. So off you go, carry on.
So you can make a point in someone's speech now?
No.
I mean, I disagreed with some things that Rob said and Ewan said. I didn't interrupt them.
But Dave, just carry on with your debate. I'm putting this to the side. Carry on with your debate. There's nothing else I can do. The comment has been made, and I said we accept his comment. That is not ruling in his favour. I'm not ruling in his favour. I want you to carry on with your debate. And you will have an adjustment in time.
There's no such thing in standing orders as the chair.
Yeah, but what do you want me to do? Make him
comment.
take the comment back and waste more time, or get on with your debate?
You're the one wasting the time there, not me.
Please carry on with your debate.
I actually support the middle road because I think there's legitimacy on both sides of the arguments. We don't want to get behind in our spending. At the same time, we don't want to make it unaffordable for the community. And one of the problems with Rob's suggestion is that the rate increases become so steep that they become unaffordable and they cause all sorts of political and social problems. If we can do steady, reasonably slow increases, then we can meet our needs in the future. And that's why I support the path that we've gone down, because it is that balanced compromise.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor, I think Deputy Mayor Taylor was next, then Councillor Van Oosten.
Thanks, Mayor Southgate. When your well-respected Chair of Finance gives the speech that he just has, you know that we've got a problem. And I don't think we have struck a balance between growth and affordability. I know in our household there's more money going out than coming in at the moment. We don't seem to be doing anything differently. We're scratching our heads and we're topping up from savings each week at the moment. There must be thousands of households in the city feeling the same way. And as a council, our contribution to that stress is to raise rates by 13.8% over the last 2 years. I don't enjoy voting against projects continuously, as I did a lot during the annual plan. That's not a position I enjoy being in. It feels negative. I feel like I'm being like the tough parent, not the popular one, and no one enjoys that. And some of this has been used against me. Just recently, an elected member pointed to my stance on the welcoming plan, because to be honest, I think the welcoming plan, Te Pou Manu o Ora, basically should be a plan for all cultures, not just Māori culture. And the fact that I didn't want to spend all the money we wanted on the welcoming plan was brought up, to have a crack at me. Well, I take that criticism on the chin, because it shows that despite caring about something, I was prepared to spend less on something which I valued, because I knew there was a bigger picture. If only some of the rest of us could have shown some similar restraint. We've gone from a $2 million deficit forecast in the LTP for 22-23 to 14 million. And that means now we're borrowing to keep the lights on until 26-27. We've left a terrible legacy. How the heck am I going to support that? This is precisely what the former mayor tried to turn around by putting rates up by nearly 10%. He realised we couldn't continue borrowing to keep the lights on. It was bad practice. We've undone all that good work. Yep, some of it was COVID, some of it was inflation, but not all of it by a long stretch. That's the legacy we're leaving. And the argument that the mayor uses, that there are big costs that we're stuck with, and those opposing this should be identifying projects to cull. It's not just up to them to find those. What is the mayor, with her executive powers, to set the agenda for this council doing?
Excuse me, Jeff, point of order. That is irrelevant at this point in time and incorrect. We all sought to reduce, we all sought to reduce costs. We all sought to reduce costs. Quite a few councillors around this room did, on various different things, and I acknowledge that we all had different views. Please carry on with your debate without personalising it.
Right, so you set the direction for this council. If we have left a financial mess, then is it not the mayor's responsibility to take that leadership? The last mayor showed that leadership. He took action to redress the balance so the council would head back towards not borrowing for everyday costs. This council has undone all that good work, and I'm opposing this plan.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Van Oosten.
Thank you, Mayor Paula and colleagues, for your debate. Thank you, Rob, for your stance that you've continued to take through this process. I respect that, but hold quite a different view. We've spent many hours as a committee to be able to interrogate all of the aspects that go into this annual plan. And for some around the table, it seems that some of those complexities have been forgotten or have been put to the back of their minds. I think about the real economic uncertainty that we're facing, the high inflation, the need to provide our CE with the realistic personnel budget that reflects directly on our balancing the books, factors that are well beyond our control with regard to the increase of the provision for depreciation that we need to make. Our city assets are worth more, but that has a real negative impact again on balancing our books. And the time frame and the picture that we set makes it look as though we're unable to handle our budgets, but actually that isn't the case. It's much more complex than that, and I think that we've all actually had the chance to remove projects through this process that we haven't been willing to do and haven't been able to really stop the kind of spending that we need to do to ensure that we've got a city that, reminding you all, that we want to be able to deliver a city that's easy to live in, where people can thrive, where there's lots to do, where there's a centre that we love, and that we don't forget about our green city. None of those principles should be compromised in this. Council has the ability and the headroom to be able to wear this additional debt and not force it onto ratepayers who are already experiencing a really difficult economic time. And so I will be supporting this annual plan and the provisions within it. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor, I'm sorry, I didn't see if it was Angela or Sarah first, do you know? Sarah, then Angela.
Thanks, Mayor Paulo. So I will be supporting this annual plan, and I want to make a couple of points. Firstly, I respect a lot of what Rob has said and agree with it. I think that we are going to have to look at rates increases. We haven't done it this time around, but I do remind councillors that we didn't shy away from a significant rate increase during the long-term plan, where we increased rates that year by 8.9% and also approved an increase in the yearly increase going on, rates increase going on from then. So we didn't shy away from that. And I agree, we will have to relook at this because we do need to get closer to balancing the books sooner. But I also want to, there was an attempt, I think, from some councillors to pin the big deficit that we're looking at on an addiction to spending, and that is absolutely just incorrect. So if you look at the operational spending that we approved that's additional, that was debated during this annual plan, there are two items, the school travel plan and the welcoming plan. Beyond, there was also the increased maintenance of cemetery, which was unanimous. There was also some funding for looking at the wastewater treatment plant in terms of reducing emissions, which was actually taken from a larger sum that was already tagged for that. And that was also supported fully by councillors. So there is a very small amount of additional spending which for OPEX, which was debated and didn't have unanimous support. The majority of this has been inflation and has been depreciation. And if you want to actually reduce operational spending enough to bring us back to balancing the books to offset that, then you're looking at things like, and these are things that were raised in our long-term plan as ways to reduce spending, reducing library hours, reducing our parks maintenance, including how often we mow or clear the bins, reducing how often we pick up litter, reducing our time increasing the time in which we can respond to complaints, reducing the maintenance for our roundabouts, culling our aquatic education program, culling our museum education services, which provide things like school visits, reducing our transport safety education programs, reducing street cleaning, reducing verge maintenance, and more. So none of those were put forward, and I don't think that we want to be going backwards in those areas, but there's a significant amount you would have to cut to bring us back from the deficit that we're looking at. So I just want to clear that up. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, thank you. I am happy to support the annual plan and congratulate Councillor Sarah for being 100% on point with her comments. Look, I didn't hear through the process in the numerous meetings of the annual plan some of the members who are criticising today come up with a long list of projects for us to reduce. Simply voting against projects doesn't cut it for me. I also support Councillor Sarah in her clearly and correctly identifying the small number of projects that were actually added, and I think it ended up around $500,000. The majority of our cost increases came from inflation and of millions of $5 million, I think it was, in part, and many members wanted a lot more than that, and that comes out of operating. The other one, of course, is all really cost inflation and the increases, and we can't control that, and we know we can't control that. There's also been some convenient criticism of a previous term where we did reduce services, and that was 2-3 terms ago, and yet last term I sat around the table and listened to many members criticise that particular process and say, and now we're playing catch up. So I'm finding the convenience of some of the politics going on a little bit disappointing, but I understand it, it's an election year. The other thing that I think is missing is that we went out and consulted on this annual plan, and we didn't have to do that, but we supported doing that because we know that times are tough. And overwhelmingly, people asked us to cover the costs by debt. They didn't want us to reduce services. So more and more lately, we're not listening to our public. And, you know, I don't want to be that council. I've been on a council in the past that's done that. And it's not what we're here to do. We're not here to represent our ideas of what the world should be. We're here to represent the people of Hamilton, and they are eyes wide open. I agree, debt is not something we want to continue to use to keep the lights on, but we are in unprecedented times, and I think that this council has done a very good job under the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
I'm sitting here feeling like a pair of jandals at the moment, or flip-flops, because I keep trying to decide whether or not I'm going to go for or against. But I will say that I somewhat semi-reluctantly will vote in favour of adopting the annual plan today, and that's largely because of the constructive discussion that I've heard come from both sides. I look to the likes of Councillor Dave and Angela with all of their experience, chiming in with some really good evidence to suggest that, yep, we have to be aware that there is going to be some debt, and I'm guided by a little bit by you, by that kind of almost kaumatua type status that you hold in the chamber. So thank you for that. Look, ratepayers and people alike, we're all fairly resilient when it comes to making adjustments, and households will adjust for certain increases in costs. I mean, that's how businesses and households operate. If you, when we ran our business, if you wanted to improve your bottom line, then you either went and made more sales or you stripped costs out of your supply chain, and I see council as being not too different to that. So we will adjust. And the other thing I would say is, taking a very holistic approach to this is, while the economic outlook does look a little bit bleak now, it will pass, and we will move into clearer waters, and things will be good again, because that's just the nature of a cycle. And we're having a bit of a downturn, and it's not great, and we do have to tighten our belts. But like my granddad always used to say, if you take care of the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves. The long-term gain is that things we are doing now are going to give us a significant upswing in the future, because you don't build a house from the roof down, you build it from the foundation upwards. And just look around and have a look at some of the really good stuff that's going on in the city. We are living by the principles that we've set up through various different agreements that we've come to, and I think we'll be okay. I, for one, am not completely afraid of debt. I don't like a lot of debt. I think maybe we could have moved the rate increase slightly upwards, but I'm comfortable with where it's at. So I look forward to a real positive next 2 to 3 years. And if we get it wrong and I do get re-elected, I'll front up and be the first one to put my hand up and say, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, apologies, I have a hearing issue today, but the hearing issue that I have in terms of, as you know, a disability, I hear loud and clear vision, I hear loud and clear responsibility, I hear loud and clear what are we doing for today's primary school kids who will inherit this city, and many of them will be, a number of them will be in this chamber in years to come. What is the building blocks we create for them. I've been through many annual plans, and some I haven't, with reluctance, one or two I haven't supported historically, but this one I am going to support because we are a city in a very high growth trajectory, notwithstanding current significant economic headwinds. The fact is that Hamilton Kerikeri is one of the 4 major metros, urban and Greater Hamilton. If you look at population projections, we will probably potentially eventually be larger than Christchurch in years to come. So these are the building blocks. I don't want a future generation to look back on this council and say, oh, what lack of vision they had, because they then pick up the pieces. Wherever you go, you still have to put the pipes in. If you have actually a vision for your kids and your grandkids, you still have to put your parks and your playgrounds and your library services. You still have to have a vibrant, wonderful, welcoming community. Those are realities. And that does, of course, Your Worship, come with a price tag. Surely we have an example of a city across the Kaimais, Tauranga, that didn't make those hard decisions, and we can see that they've had to have a commissioner in to sort that out. This won't happen in Hamilton, because I think successive councils, by and large, we've had debates, have had a vision. So I will be supporting this plan. I also want to shout out, if I may, to my new colleague, Councillor Donovan. I think he's summarised it with a wonderful simplicity, and I'm saying that in a genuine way. You've sort of cut to the chase. And I also shout out to my very good colleague Angela O'Leary, for her wise words. And obviously Dave McPherson has been held up as one of our esteemed elders, but I'll have to also hold Angela O'Leary up as an esteemed elder as well, and listen to their wisdom. And Sarah and Maxine, who represent the new breed, along with Mark Donovan of the new council. So you've got a combination in this chamber, which I think is really good, of wisdom and experience, and the new generation. Kesh joined us as well. So I think, by and large, not easy, but I think this is the best we can do in the circumstances. And I think we have definitely are leaving a very good legacy for future generations.
Thank you. Does that leave me right to reply? Thank you very much. Thank you for all your good comments, and those comments just highlight the kind of debate that we've had all through this process about getting the balance right between rates and debt. And nobody likes the financial situation we find ourselves in. But I personally, my personal comment on this, I don't think the ratepayer at this time, with all that's going on economically in their own lives, can bear the full burden of the cost of our activities. So unfortunately, the only other way to deal with that at the moment, until we ask government to cough up with some more money for much needed infrastructure, which I'm working on, by the way, is we have to strike a balance. And as Dave has quite rightly said, this is all about determining a future that looks after our residents, and Martin has said the same thing, and striking an affordability factor. I would just like to say thank you to the team. That last day that we had in Chamber, where we approved the annual plan, was long. The debate was good. We turned over every stone. Every councillor had the opportunity to throw up some projects that they were concerned about. And probably every councillor did, but just different ones. And democracy prevailed, because at the end of the day, we took multiple votes. And every councillor, including me, except in the rare occasion that I get a casting vote, has one vote. So this is a democracy decision reached by collaboration with my colleagues. I'm proud of that. And I agree with Angela wholeheartedly. We had some really constructive and positive feedback in our consultation. People asked us for things. They asked us, for example, to look after our cemetery better. They asked us, for example, to do some more work on intersections. They asked us, for example, to push harder and faster on our cycle lanes. They supported green space. They supported the development of the zoo. They understood the need for more water plants for water treatment and to make our water system more resilient. And at the end of the day, everyone who was in the room, and not everybody was, but everyone who was there on that day cast their vote on all those items. And I'm really thankful to you as a team. I've thoroughly enjoyed working through this with you, councillors. I think we've had, as Martin suggests, amazing balanced perspectives. And I've, in that debate, changed my mind a couple of times where I thought I might vote against something, and then the rational debate moved me another way. That's politics, that's democracy. The staff have worked so super hard on this, and my final thanks goes to them. We've worked long and hard over a number of months in very trying times for New Zealand. Thank you for the work you've done. Thank you, councillors, for the work you've done. We'll go to the vote, thanks. I've moved. There's a second. All in favour? And against?
The motion is carried, noting that Councillor Wilson, Deputy Mayor Taylor and Councillor Pascoe have dissented, and we're voting via audio-visual link.
Thank you. Thank you. What are we up to now?
Rates resolution. 155. We're still one more item in. Just one more.
We've got one under separate. Yeah, yeah, the gift that keeps giving. Okay, so we're on the rates resolution, which is receives the report, approves to set the rates, which is actually a procedural motion in some respects. We can't have agreed on an annual plan by democracy and then tell the staff they can't set the rates. Just doesn't work like that, so I'm happy to move it. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Van Oosten. Oh, you got a question, Rob?
Yes, I have got a question.
Sure.
I have got a question, thanks. And it's a question around the government compliance rate, which has been set in the report in paragraph 17 at 11.9 million. And this is a question I did raise last year when we set this in the long-term plan. Are we doing separate accounting in order to ensure that that 11 million that we're collecting specifically for that purpose, that government compliance, which my recollection was to cover the Three Waters and the district plan work? Are we keeping a sort of an accounting record that we're actually spending that amount of targeted rate that we're collecting? And if so, are we going to continue doing that in future years?
So to answer your first question, yes we are. So you'll see when in the FIS statements, when we produce those, that particular targeted rate goes against those two activities. And obviously from a management accounting internal perspective, we do that as well. The second part of your question, for as long as it's still part of our rates that this council has agreed, then yes, we will.
Okay, and my final question to that is, as it's a targeted rate, we have to spend the money on those particular areas, don't we?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No? All right, I've moved. Councillor Van... Oh, you have a question? No, you haven't. You're just fiddling your pen. You look like you were waving for a moment there.
I was just waving at you, Paul.
Oh, good. Nice. All in favour... Oh, moved and seconded. Is there any debate? No. All in favour, please raise your hands. Opposed? Is that an opposed or in favour, Ewan? Sorry. Did you give me that?
In favour.
Thank you.
You can't oppose, it's just a mechanism of council. It would be unusual to oppose it.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
The motion is carried unanimously.
We've got the attachment. What else have we got here?
Now we're going to return.
29.
Yeah, we're going to return to the previous agenda. So if you want to stretch your legs and grab a fresh cup of tea, we'll be back in at 1:30 with the next, roughly. Yep. ding and all of that stuff? That was a human ding ding.
We were talking about the esteemed elders in this council.
I know, I wanted to know why I wasn't one when my hair's this colour, Ewan. And, you know.
I mean, I've lost all my hair.
You'll get there eventually, Ewan.
Thank you. It's about the balance, Dave, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, let's. Oh, you've got your thing on, Dave, for a reason? No, he was just. Oh, you just. Oh.
That was so I could tell Ewan what I was talking about.
Okay. So we're on the strategic risk and assurance item now, which is on page 235, I think. So it's item number 16. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, councillors. The risk report that we've got is part of our regular update to council from the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee. I just wanted to introduce Julie Ambry. She's joined my team as the Enterprise Risk Lead. Sure. Right. Is that better, Councillor Gallagher?
Some of our esteemed elders have trouble.
So this is part of our regular reporting up from the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee. I have Julie Ambry here with me today. She's our new Enterprise Risk Lead in my team, but she's come from the community team in the organisation. The few things that I want to note are that we have completed a workshop to review our strategic risks with the committee and some elected members who were able to make the day. That's not reflected in the current report. We'll be looking at updating those to the next committee meeting, which we have penciled in for December. And just the other matters to note, which the councillors are already aware of, is the work happening around the reform programs that are happening via central government, and Strategic Risk 7, which is the significant cost escalation. So there's been some further detail in the report on those two matters, but otherwise, Mayor Southgate, I'll take the report as read. And are there any questions?
Let's see if there are any questions. Jill, I do have one, because I was in Wellington for the last one of these, but I just had one question on the, you might not be able to answer it because I think it's a very good report, but then I read something about volcanology. Oh, we have volcanologists. And I've been reading in the media the Ruapehu being being a bit grumbly at the moment. And so there is potential of pollution into the Whangaehu River, but not Hamilton. Is that because we've got sufficient reservoirs of clean water? Because if the water gets into the lake Taupō, if it gets into Lake Taupō, then it starts to come down the whole system, doesn't it? And that's considered quite minimal risk? Or we've got plenty of resilience in our water storage to cope with that? I'm sorry, I don't put you on the spot.
So in response to your question, the risk to council at the previous eruption was ashfall, and so it does actually put a risk to our treatment processes at the water treatment plant. And so our BCP, our business continuity plans and our emergency response plans are being reviewed to ensure that they are updated to respond, and so we do monitor and understand that. So any quality of changes in the river and the water heading to our treatment plant, we do monitor, and just to make sure that we're able to treat that water. But there is a potential that if the quality, and we're unable to do that, there may be risks to our water supply, and so we keep a very close eye on it.
So that's where the resilience that we're building with those additional, have built with those additional reservoirs comes into play?
So there is a requirement to have a certain amount of hours within the reservoirs. So if there is a long period of time, there is a risk that we won't have that resilience. So you've got 24 hours of water supply within the reservoirs for the city.
Yeah, so I'm just to flag that I'm interested in that conversation as we go forward with our water assets, how we build greater resilience into the system. I mean, we've got a reasonably good budget for that, in fact, big budget towards future waters. But I guess those are the kind of things that we'll have to give some, I mean,
Yes,
we're
and
at
those
risk,
are the,
right? Because-
absolutely correct, and those are the sub-regional conversations we also need to have to ensure resilience across the region in terms of supply.
Yeah, okay. Yes, thank you. I remember people making fun of tsunamis a long time ago until there really was a significant event. So, and the cyber attack, we are progressing nicely through the work. So we're less likely to experience what the Health Board experienced.
Yes, with a rider on that, as Murray said, that there'll always be the risk, and he's just been to a conference around cyber security, which has highlighted the fact that this is going to remain a major issue going forward in the foreseeable future, and a lot of those people are at it, all the time, and it's a growing number as well. So we have to be vigilant.
Thank you for allowing me those questions. I would have asked at the time, but any other questions, anyone? No? Okay, well, I'll move and have a seconder, please. Councillor Donovan. Any debate? I will just say on this one that because the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee is a subcommittee of Council, I do want to just remind everyone how fundamentally important it is that we do get across this detail and understand it, because the risks can range from minor to major, but there's a lot of prediction in there, and we could face some considerable risks. And I note the one I'm not going to talk about today, but there's some risks in climate, and there's some risks around the reforms that we just need to bring to the front of our mind. There's no point having this independent group if we don't buy into the assessments.
And through the chair, can I just say the workshops are very, very worthwhile attending.
Yeah. And actually, if we look at our directors, that they are. And I have to say, we actually are obliged as directors, which is what we are of governors. We are obliged by law to make sure that we're up and appraised of all the risks and our health and safety. So I'll just make that point.
When you appoint us as chairs, you don't actually tell us that that's part of the job.
Okay, thank you. So it's moved and it's seconded. All in favour? Opposed? No? Item 17, please, which is the Safety and Wellness Report, which was the next.
So we've got Dan Finn online.
Oh, yep,
So,
okay.
yep.
Hi, Dan.
Dan's working from home.
Morena, yes, I'm working from home, and I've got a house full of family members who have COVID, so it's a never-ending tale. Hey, look, thanks for your time. Look, I'll take the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee report that we've submitted as read, but just to reiterate, look, it's a great opportunity for us to share with all of Council the key programs of work and the continuous improvements that we're making towards our safety performance and improvement, and to provide also with an opportunity for you to ask us questions to make sure that we're focusing our efforts in the right areas. So just happy to open that up now for any questions or comment.
Okay, any questions on this? Because you can see the various statuses, and we've got some in green, but we have got some in orange that you may want to understand if you're not work across those. Thank you. No questions. Thank you. It's a really easy to read report, so we appreciate that. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ewan and Councillor Angela, thank you. So it's been moved, it's been seconded. Does anybody want to speak to it? No. I just thank staff for the work that you've done to make this such a readable report that we can keep abreast of the trends. Thanks very much, Dan and team. All in favour? Opposed?
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. That brings us, we did the peacocks yesterday, didn't we?
Yes, so we're now on to item 20.
20. Oh, this feels like a long time coming, Sarah. Climate change policy. Hello. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors and Mapula. So I just wanted to make one quick note in the report today. So we have one minor change that we'd like for clarity into the policy, which is on page 350. We say in there in step 2 that the emissions impact increase or decrease to the council's greenhouse gas emissions. For clarity, we want to add in there the city and councils to make it clear that this is applying to all projects that would impact broader city, not just our direct council emissions. So a slight tweak in the wording there for clarity.
You raced through it because I was trying to find the page.
Page 350.
Yeah.
Down on step 2, the second point there, we put, it's on the table.
Second line down in the table.
Just so that we're being really clear that this is applying. So if it's a project that, whilst we're organising it, it's run by council, it might affect broader than just our council direct emissions, so that that's really clear in terms of the users of the policy.
So is there a change to that, Charlotte, just to be clear for the elected members?
Yes, so we would like to include the words decrease the city and council's greenhouse gas emissions. So the inclusion of the word city in there.
So in the recommendation,
Yes.
we'll just, including the changes, the usual thing.
But the basic and detailed targets or whatever they are, do they remain the same?
They all remain the same, yeah. And just for context, because 10 tonnes, we might not all know what that really means or it can equate to. So we were just looking up some numbers. So around 10 tonnes of emissions around driving 50,000 kilometres in a medium-sized car, for context, or heating and cooling 14 average houses for a year. So it's not a small threshold where we want to move into that more detailed assessment to really understand what those emissions impacts would be for our city.
Thank you. I would like to offer Martin and Sarah the chance to move it, and Martin, you seconding?
Sarah's going to, we've pre-arranged Sarah is going to move and I'll second. Yeah, that's
that's what I thought. Any questions?
I've got a question about the motion itself,
Okay, cool.
which is also about one part of this. I'm struggling to find the date here, but I know when I read it, it had the initial starting date for the proposed for the policy of the first, somewhere in December.
Yep.
Can't remember the
1st of
December. Thanks, Charlotte. And I want to propose that be immediate start, or 1st of July, let's say, to align with the year. And I want to know whether the mover and seconder would accept that. And I'm happy to explain why in the question, and maybe have a talk with Charlotte as well. I have had a talk with Sean yesterday about this.
So are you happy to accept that change with the date, Sarah, Martin?
Yes, but I was just, I think just having some context from Sean would be helpful, because there will be still a bit of a graduated start in terms of how the policy is.
Could I
kind of
say
implemented.
my context and then get Sean to comment, because
Sure.
we've had this discussion.
No problem,
And then,
but yes,
and then
I'm
we
happy
can
to include it.
take it on from there.
Yeah, so Dave will just briefly outline what he's hoping to achieve, and then Sean can comment from a staff perspective.
There's a couple of parts of why I'm asking for that. One is that we, a number of us, including the movers of the motion, got elected to council, amongst other reasons, on the platform of having a climate change policy and actions resulting from that. We're just about at the end of this council. December is not in this council, it's in the next council. I think if we have a policy ready, it's poor form to delay its official introduction until a following council. I think it makes it an unnecessary election issue as well. So, but the second point is, I believe that I totally accept that you couldn't start every physical action at once, and that was the sort of discussion that Sean and I had yesterday, but there are some things that you could start, and for instance, and again Sean and I discussed this, council reports from end of July onwards could have a section in there, like the section now says, are there any financial implications? Are there any implications in relation to our climate change policy? And there may be, the answer from staff at that checkpoint may say, for instance, yes, we're doing this X, Y and Z, or yes, but in February 2023 we will have the report to give to so-and-so committee. So I think we need to start getting that going beforehand, and there's no reason why we would have to wait till December in a new council. I think, so I'm just asking that if we've got a policy that we think's right for now, let's approve it now, to start now, and the actions, like in lots of policies, will follow as they are physically able to follow. So I don't know whether Charlotte and Sean want to comment, but that's my thinking.
Sean?
Yes, so as Councillor Dave said, we had a discussion about that yesterday. The original intent of putting the December start date was so that we could get all the ducks in a row before we started implementing the policy. But as Councillor Dave says, if council is wanted, I absolutely understand the want and the need to implement the policy sooner. And so the implications are just that we would do everything we could to enact the policy as soon as possible. And so practically in council reports, for example, we would, with immediate effect essentially, include that section on climate change consideration into council reports. And that would mean that as staff, there's a trigger there for us to say we have considered climate change impacts, and as Councillor Dave has pointed out, where we are able to do the calculation, the assessment, we will, but just acknowledge there might be some cases in which we aren't able to do that. So, pretty much as Councillor Dave has said, is how we would enact that if the policy was effective as of tomorrow or the next day.
Okay, so Sarah's happy, Martin's happy, Sean's relatively happy. You're happy? You're all
Charlotte's
pretty
happy. That's an important one.
Yeah, so cool. Any other questions on the policy? This, again, has been forming for some time and people have had some opportunity to look through it and comment before, but is there anything outstanding now that it's in its final form? No. Okay. Yes, sorry, Dave.
Yeah, it just goes maybe to Charlotte. It goes to your point before about that particular thing you changed from council to city and council. In terms of the comms about this report, how you get it out to the public and that, are you making a big issue of it being a city-wide thing, not just the council's going to do good within its own building sort of thing? Because I've always thought the policy is a city policy, not a council one.
So more with this policy is around affecting our decisions. So it is internal looking, but it will have an effect externally. So we're being very clear on that. The strategy that will be coming to the council meeting on the 18th of August, so 2nd of August we're going to Environment Committee, 18th of August, that is very external focus. So that's very much about what we see the future of the city looking like from a climate change perspective. So that one will be much more around engaging with the community, around what the future of Hamilton looks like with climate change. Yeah. This is more that internal focus. So the media release around this will be more internal focus around how we're changing what we're doing in response to climate change.
But can it be sort of talk about the leadership aspect of that within the community?
Yeah, and this is, having a policy is a leadership thing. Very few councils in New Zealand at the moment have a climate change policy to consistently embed climate change. So it is a leadership piece for us.
Okay, sweet. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go into debate. Sarah.
Thanks. Firstly, I just want to thank our team for all of their work on this. It has taken some time to develop, but that's because they've worked really closely with our senior leadership team and each department of council to work through to ensure that this policy is workable and will be implemented well throughout the council. And they'll continue to have a lot of work to do to help the organisation to actually implement this going forward. So thank you very much for all of your work. I'm really proud of this policy. I think we all should be. It's really important that with our decisions that we're making, we're considering our impact on emissions, but also considering the impact of climate change on our business and what we do. We need to make sure that the infrastructure we put in, whether it's core infrastructure, like pipes, community infrastructure, is fit for purpose for a changing and responds to a changing climate. And I think what this policy does is ensure that where climate change is really relevant to a decision, we are considering its impacts or our impact on climate change in a really methodical way. I think, at the moment, some of our wellbeing impact statements can be quite subjective and aren't always really helpful, whereas this will be a very objective analysis of those climate change impacts. And so we are setting ourselves up to make informed decisions, to understand the trade-offs that certain projects and decisions will have, and to hopefully end up making better decisions going forward in terms of our impact on the climate as a council, the impact that we're having in terms of our community's wider emissions, for example, around transport projects, and also how we ensure that we're creating resilient infrastructure going forward. So very happy to be moving this. Thanks.
Thank you. Martin, as the
Saving my
seconder.
time.
You're saving your time? Okay, Councillor Wilson. No, he's gone. Councillor Wilson's gone.
You mean I've gone? I'm here.
No, I know you're there, but I mean, you had your little hand up to speak. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll speak. First of all,
Sorry, they're just saying I shouldn't.
McPherson moving a point of order already.
No, he wasn't wanting to give you too much encouragement, apparently. But I'm all for encouraging you. Speak.
So I'm speaking today to actually thank Councillor Sarah. I mean, the reality is, despite the fact that our most esteemed elder councillor is the chair, I have to express that the real powerhouse is Sarah on this issue. And although Sarah and I frequently disagree on this issue, I have to just acknowledge the amount of work and effort that you've played in making this come together. And so although I'm quick to be critical, I also need to occasionally acknowledge where I think you've done great work and you've put in a great effort. So I'm doing just that. As to staff, thank you. It looks a very in-depth policy. There is no doubt climate change is upon us and we've got to take steps. As people keep saying, there is no plan B or planet B. So well done. And I look forward to the next term when we really start seeing this policy affect and help implement some of the critical decisions this council has to make. So well done, Sarah. And of course, well done, Martin, and your wonderful leadership.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Yes, I was going to congratulate our environment co-matua over there, Martin, as well. But certainly acknowledge the same points about Martin and Sarah that Ewan has, but also our staff too. I think we're quite lucky with the handful of staff that we've got. Well, I don't know, is one a handful? Two, yeah. But it is time to crack on with things. So I'm glad the we've got the policy here, and particularly the strategy coming through in a month's and a half's time, because there'll be actions coming out of that we desperately need in some cases. And just a couple of things that I want to draw attention to. I noticed yesterday when we were looking at just the item before the LG&Z remits, it was talking about the degree that transport plays, or the role transport plays in carbon emissions around the country, 23%. But look at what is in Hamilton, 65, so about 3 times as higher proportion. So it's said to me we need our own climate change policy, our own strategy here, because if we just followed central government one that had a sort of one-size-fits-all, we'd significantly understate the issues that we faced here in this city, and in some other cities as well, I'm sure. So this is a good start towards that. I'm thinking of some things ahead of the strategy that we might be able to do, even for amongst our staff. I can just see the CEO saying to his general managers, "You're only going to get a general manager's salary, guys, if you start cycling into work instead of having those big SUVs like Mr. Allen uses to come in, and others." Yes, I can see some of the other general managers are actually nodding to that. So yeah, I think there's some agreement about that. And with elected members, I can see us, those who are willing to cycle in could get a 50% increase in vote to start in the election to encourage them. There could be a number of innovative measures that could be taken like that. But more seriously, I think it is the transport area that we should have a major focus in, not the only focus, but that's something that we can materially affect and materially measure. So I'm looking forward to the next step after this, really.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before you go, if you like, I'll just say a few words. I also want to thank Sarah and Martin for taking over this portfolio. Margaret was keen on this portfolio, and then, of course, when she was unwell, we needed another passionate advocate to come in and give it some steam. And so we're really good to have Charlotte back on board, because you've done other really great projects for this council in the past, so we appreciate that. But Sarah has not let up on this from day one on council, and she's not finished yet, is what I understand, because we still have the implementation plan to come. And that's where the rubber hits the road, where we give effect to this policy. A policy is a policy, but unless you actually do something, it just remains an enacted policy. So I look forward to, I think it's next month, Sarah, when the action plan comes to us. Strategy comes. That would be really good with all the, then we'll know where we put our focus, and it'll certainly, as you say, Sarah, heighten the awareness of climate considerations when we're talking about community well-beings, especially environmental and social well-beings. So really looking forward to that. And thanks again for your work. Thanks, Martin, for encouraging Sarah. Not that she needs very much encouragement to be passionate about climate, but for giving her the go-ahead to get this work done under your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say I have a very strong, renewed respect for my good colleague, Councillor Wilson, and his perceptiveness that Councillor Thompson is the powerhouse in our committee, and your observational skills, Councillor Wilson, I have to shout out to. Contextually, I was very pleased, obviously, that you appropriately gave a tribute to the late Councillor Margaret Forsyth, who was, of course, the first chairperson of this committee in this term. And it is an honour, actually, to have stepped into her shoes and to acknowledge the work that she did. And for me, there's been all talks about elders and whatever. I don't see myself as one of those, but certainly my good colleague, Councillor McPherson, Councillor O'Leary, I recognise. But life is a journey, is a learning journey. So I've certainly found this portfolio, this role, even I've been around a long time, an incredible, important learning journey for me personally. And I just, in my shout out to Councillor Sarah, and I'll use her as an example of the new generation of leadership in this city that is emerging. And if that leadership, that new generation of leadership, and there are a number of others in this chamber who are going to be taking this city forward, then I'm going to argue, subject to an election process, that the city is in very, very good hands. And of course, as the Worship and others have said, we face reality to prepare the city to have sufficient resilience to actually to cope, if you like, or to embrace the realities of climate change. So there are some huge, huge challenges coming up, as we know, in the new council's next long-term plan. All right. So I just want to say that I think, you know, what we're trying to do as a committee is put those building blocks in there. I want to do a huge shout out, and you've heard me complain at length about just how thinly resourced our environment team is. But to Charlotte and Kathy and the team, I want to do a big, huge shout out for them. And I just want to say to the incoming council, you please do not neglect that resource, because that resource, in terms of intellectual acumen and people, is extremely, extremely important. So it is with great pleasure that I second this particular motion today, and also acknowledge the next generation of leadership in this city.
Thank you. No more speakers, I don't think. No?
I'll
right of reply.
My right of reply. Firstly, thank you everyone for your debate and support for this policy. I just, in terms of some further context, because there was some discussion around the strategy and what's coming next. So this is essentially a framework for our decision making to ensure that it's really informed, that we're making good decisions around climate change going forward. But we've also got the strategy, which is looks at this vision citywide for the city, but with a particular focus on what we as a council can have an influence over in terms of moving towards a lower carbon city, and also adapting to climate change more broadly. So that strategy is going to the Environment Committee in August, and then to the Council in August for final adoption. And from that strategy, there will be a more detailed action plan, which really prioritises key projects so that we're very clear on what kinds of things we can do that would have the biggest bang for buck and make the biggest difference quickly. So that will mean that we have a really good foundation moving into the next long-term plan, but also the strategy will be an important way for us to communicate with the community around the importance of these issues and how we can work together on them. So there's more to come, but yeah, absolutely today is a really important policy. And thanks again, everyone, and for your support and staff for their work. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go to the vote. All in favour? Any opposed?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So what else do we have to do? We're going into public excluded, so we'll take a very short break. Just got a couple of small things to do and to get you into public excluded.
Move.
Oh, I'll move. You move. And Cash will second. And now we are in public excluded. Councillors will be about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll be back into it.
At the start of that, or at the end of that, the great Andrew Parsons' Bikes on Pipes will be the big reveal shortly.
Yeah. So you need to get him down.
Not like.
All right, anyway, let's take a 10-minute break.
Texted him, he's keen to come.
10-minute break.
In 10 minutes?
Yeah. Is he keen to come?
Yeah.
Tell him the mayor said he's. I could be autocratic for once. I could say he has to come. Yeah, 10 minutes. Tell him I'm